What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American. I hope you're having a very pleasant, happy new year. I thought it'd be fun to welcome in the new year by learning about how the US plans to overthrow and invade and destroy Canada forever. No. I'm sorry, but that is what the video is about today, but I did find this title kind of funny to me. I've been having these videos pop up on my feeds, my recommended, like how the US would plan to invade the UK. Now, I saw this one, how the US plans to invade Canada. And I'm like, what? Why does this video exist? Is this serious? Is it real? I want to know. It's time, the day has finally come. I want to learn more about this. I don't know why this kind of thing would even exist or how serious this is, but either way, should be interesting. So let's see. The U.S. plan to invade Canada, as this video is called.
And in the video today, we're exploring War Plan Red, which was the US's plan to invade Canada.
It has a name. War Plan Red. The U.S. plan to invade Canada. That is strange.
A time-honored tradition in the US military, contingency plans have been drawn up for defense against and invasion of most major military powers. In fact, in response to events on the Korean...
Okay. So it's not just Canada. The US has contingency plans against like lots of other world superpowers or something. This reminds me of if you're into like Marvel or DC or comics, like how Batman has contingency plans to if he needs to destroy Superman or Wonder Woman and the Flash, like in case they turn evil. That's what is that what this is? Like, okay. I guess I understand the reason?
Korean Peninsula, the US and South Korea recently signed on to such a plan. One of the most interesting episodes in this rich history of preparing for things that will probably never happen came when Uncle Sam planned to invade Johnny Canuck. The early planning. In the years leading up to World War II, beginning in fact in the 1920s, the army began planning for wars with a variety of countries, designating each plan by a different color. Germany black, Japan orange, Mexico green, and England red. As a dominion of Great Britain...
Wow. Well, this was 100 years ago, the 1920s. And that we were like making tons of contingency plans about how we would invade. It was around the time where it was like world wars and stuff. This kind of sentiment makes a lot more sense to me in the context of like war and stuff going on. Okay. I think I get it.
Orange, Mexico green, and England red. As a dominion of Great Britain, Canada crimson was presumed to be loyal to England, and thus was included in the plan against a supposed British invasion, not to be confused with that of the 1960s. The paranoid US military...
Okay. This is making more and more sense. Not that it's a good thing that the United States created weird contingency invasion plans against like tons of nations back in the 20s. But gosh, makes me wonder, did other nations around the globe similarly come up with like plans like this of, okay, how are we gonna take down the United States if they get even more crazy?
Strategists who devised War Plan Red believed that if Britain and America were to battle again, it would begin from a trade dispute. Whatever the cause, army planners anticipated that any war with Europe would be prolonged, not only because of British and Canadian tenacity, but also from the fact that Britain could draw manpower and resources from its empire.
Yeah. I've learned more about the British Empire. Gah. Huge. Biggest in history, right? British Empire. I never knew how much it spans across the entire globe. A lot of flags that exist today still have like the Union Jack British symbol on their flag in other parts of the world. It's crazy.
including, at that time, Australia, Hong Kong, India, Kenya, New Zealand, Nigeria, Palestine, South Africa, and Sudan. The Canadian Invasion Plan. Different versions of the plan were proposed, and one was first approved in 1930 by the War Department. It was updated in 1934 to 1935 and, of course, never implemented.
Right.
Although it was far-reaching and addressed some of Britain's greatest strengths, such as the Royal Navy, one of the chief areas of concern was the US's long border with Canada. As a result, the plan addressed the US's northern neighbours with great detail, to wit, British Columbia.
Well, it's kind of disturbing how like much effort and detail and like actual effort was put into this plan. Like real serious thought about like, okay, what would we do if like the worst case scenario happened? Like, wow.
With its vital Navy base, military strategists planned a naval attack on Victoria launched from Port Angeles, Washington, as well as a combined assault on Vancouver and its island. Successful occupation of this area would effectively cut off Canada from the Pacific. Manitoba.
What? Wow. Okay. So speaking purely like military tactics here, the idea was to like try to cut off resources and like trade routes and resources to Canada. I guess that makes sense.
Central hub for the Canadian railway system was located in Manitoba's capital city, Winnipeg. Army strategists felt that a land assault could easily be launched from Grand Forks, North Dakota, and Canada's rail lines neutralized. New Brunswick and Nova Scotia.
Wow, there's plans for like every province. Land assault? Good. This is disturbing.
Military.
But, you know, strange. It's like a traffic accident. You can't, like, take your eye off it. You're like, I want to learn more. Like, this is so weird.
Planners apparently hoped to stun the maritime provinces with a poison gas attack on Nova Scotia's capital city, Halifax, then also home to a major naval base. The chemical battle would then be followed by a sea invasion at St. Margaret's Bay. If that didn't work...
Why does that specific area need a chemical attack? Also, like, chemical attack nowadays, like, I'm pretty sure I've heard American, like, military officials at some point be like, chemical warfare is something you don't do. Like, more, like, from a American military moral standpoint, like, there are certain things you don't do, like chemical attacks. Yet in the 1930s, they were like, oh yeah, well, this is the area that will do that to, and then we'll attack by sea, and like, what are they thinking?
An overland mission and occupation of New Brunswick would hopefully isolate the valuable seaports of Nova Scotia from the remainder of Canada, effectively stopping British resupply of its forces. Ontario. A three-pronged attack arising from Buffalo, Detroit, and Sault-Ste-Marie would gain control of the Great Lakes for the US, in addition to causing a crushing blow to British supply lines. It would allow the United States to control most of Canada's industrial production.
Wow. This is like an alternate universe where Canada and the United States would have finally been one probably not so happy country, because in this timeline we would have invaded, chemical attacked some areas, stormed others by foot. There would have been mass casualties on both sides, and then we'd be in the present where it'd be like everyone would be like, oh, remember that time we had that horrific war between Canada and America? This is like just... like I keep saying, like, disturbing, but I think it's the level of detail that's, like, the most, like, hard for me to wrap my mind around, that this plan, I'm assuming he's basically getting all this information straight from forget what he called it, was like Plan Red or whatever. Yeah, it's pretty wild to think that a lot of American, like, government and military officials, like, signed off on this plan, like, okay, yeah, that's what we'll do.
Quebec. An overland attack launching from adjacent New York and Vermont was planned. Control of this French-speaking province would, when combined with the control of the maritime provinces, stop Britain from having any entry point to the remainder of the country from the eastern seaboard. Revelation of the plan.
So it seems like the entire plan is basically built around the idea of choking Canada off from British Empire, British support, and like taking it over that way, which I guess if you're being objective that objective about it. That's like the logical way to go about it or whatever. Okay, so this says revelation of the plan. What does that mean?
Although it was declassified in 1974, portions of the plan were inadvertently leaked long before. During what was supposed to be classified testimony by military brass to the House Military Affairs Committee, two generals revealed some of the details of War Plan Red. That testimony was mistakenly published in official reports, which were picked up and printed by the New York Times. Also revealed in the New York...
When was this? Wasn't this like super disturbing information to Canadians and Americans, I would hope. It's disturbing to me. When this was leaked, I think they said it was he said this was made public record in the 70s. God, this is shocking.
New York Times was the fact that the United States Congress had assigned $57 million in 1935, nearly $1 billion today, in order to build 3 air bases near the US-Canadian border in line with War Plan Red's recommendations in case the US needed to attack Canada.
What? We actually built air bases? Like, part of this plan was put into effect. We actually built air bases near the Canadian-American border in anticipation of this plan working? Wow.
These air bases were supposed to be disguised as civilian airports, but the government's printing official accidentally reported the existence of the air bases on the 1st of May 1935, blowing their cover. Yeah. Interestingly, War Plan Red's recommendations also proposed that the US not just invade in such a war with Britain and Canada, but take over, adding any conquered regions as states to the United States.
This is what I mean. This is what I was talking about earlier. The alternate timeline where, well, actually in this one, it's just a bigger America and there's still Canada. Why does it say Canada? Okay, in this timeline, if America attacked and took over half of Canada, the rest, Canada would be known as Canada for some reason that nobody knows. But yeah, wow.
And now the sad history of Americans invading Canada badly. Americans have a history of underestimating the Canadians. For example, in the Revolutionary War. In September 1775, Benedict Arnold, when he was still on the side of the United States, led an unsuccessful assault on Quebec City overland through difficult Maine wilderness. Over 40% of Arnold's men were lost making the attempt, and yet inexplicably he was promoted to Brigadier General. And then there's the...
That's right. There are actual historical incidents of conflict between Canada and America. It does not surprise me to learn that the American downfall in these circumstances was underestimating their opponents. That actually somehow makes complete sense.
The War of 1812. During the Second War with...
And the War of 1812. Yes, which I have learned a bit about.
Britain, Thomas Jefferson opined that to occupy Canada was a mere matter of marching for US troops. Yet attacks in the Old Northwest, across the Niagara River, and north from Lake Champlain all failed. And there's the proxy war for Ireland. Over a period of 5 years, from 1866 to 1872, Irish Catholics from the US engaged in a series of raids on Canadian targets, including forts and customs houses. Known as the Fenian Raids, the Fenian Brotherhood had hoped that their actions would force the British to withdraw from Ireland. They were unsuccessful. And then there's
I actually didn't know about that stuff.
Cold War. In 1995, Michael Moore created a fictional war between the United States and Canada in the comedy Canadian Bacon. Like the real-life Americans who went before them, the fictional invasion in this farcical political commentary failed. So what?
What? Never. Canadian Bacon? It's a movie about an American-Canadian conflict with John Candy. Huh. Talk about more things I never knew.
So what goes around comes around. Before you get the idea that only Americans are aggressive bastards, you should know that the Canadians had developed a plan to invade the United States before the US ever started on its scheme.
Ah, okay, good. That makes me feel a little better about this whole thing. Okay, hey Canada, see, you have a contingency plan with a bunch of numbers here. About how to counter-invade America. I guess that makes us kind of equal in a way. Luckily, we can kind of look at this and just kind of laugh now because it's so preposterous sounding.
To invade the United States before the US ever started on its scheme. Characterized as a counterattack, the 1921 plan more accurately resembles a preemptive war. The brainchild of Lieutenant Colonel Buster Sutherland Brown of the Canadian Army, the plan called for a surprise attack on the US as soon as the Canadians had evidence that America was planning an invasion. It was felt that a preemptive strike was required as it would be the only way Canada could prevail in a battle with its larger southern neighbor, which benefited from a far greater arsenal and much more manpower.
Probably true. Actually, pretty smart. Like if we're talking about military tactics here, America's plan was to cut off resources, trade and resources from Canada, and Canada's plan, facing like a larger enemy, was like, okay, it's gonna have to be like a very preemptive, unexpected strike that causes a lot of damage in order to try to make this a fair fight. So both plans, it's I don't want to think about this stuff actually ever being real, but in the hypothetical scenario, I can understand the logic behind all this.
Other advantages of the quick strike included the fact that the war would be fought on American territory, so losses in civilian life and infrastructure would be borne by the Americans. Finally, the colonel thought this plan would best buy the Canadians time for their allies, the British, to come to their rescue before the Americans could launch an effective counterstrike. And what can we learn from this? It's always the quiet ones. So I really hope you liked that video. If you did, please give us a like below.
It's always the quiet ones. Canada, what are you scheming? What are you actually, according to this, you already schemed. That's right, Canada would have like the British Empire to come like back them up in a matter of time. Wow, scary to think about this whole situation, but also, entertaining, thankfully. Fun and entertaining to look at now. This whole thing never even came to fruition. And everything is relatively jolly. So, in that sense, I enjoyed looking at this. I was always so curious about these things. Plan to invade Canada. This title made me like, what? What did this say? This was by Today I Found Out. I liked this. That was a good explanation. I understand a lot more about this now. Contingency plans. Canada had one as well. America had one. Interesting stuff. It also just was like a lot of history and stuff, which is always fascinating. Fascinating stuff. Okay, I enjoyed this. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Canadian culture stuff in Canada that I have never seen or heard about before, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching. Have a very happy New Year's Day and a great new year. Start of a new year. New stuff. And see you next time.